For the channel, man. Well, if you like tanks, this is definitely the way to go. It's definitely the most tanky character in the game. The warrior is definitely more like melee DPS. This is definitely tank. Each class and subclass kind of has two different builds that you can go with. And if you're really looking to use this class for tanking, I'll show you real quick. So, as you level up, you'll get these engravings. And there's these two different class bonus engravings that you can use. Low Knight is more for like damage DPS, which you still do decent DPS, but like it's not really going to be like a true tank. But if you want like to be indestructible, go Combat Readiness. So that Combat Readiness is going to give you additional shield, 50% whenever you're in defensive stance, which is kind of your special ability to kind of put up your shield and take a lot of damage. So that's cool. And then it also gives you a lot more damage with your normal skills. So there's a difference between Low Knight and Combat Readiness, both in that Combat Readiness is going to give you a lot more shield and tankiness, but it also changes your ability usage, which is kind of interesting. So you got to take a look. So the normal ones, any of these ones that say normal, or the normal ones, some of these are charge. And you'll notice the colors, the blue and the orange. So the blue skills are the ones basically that I'm using in my build, and I've actually gone tank. So that Combat Readiness is kind of what I'm gearing towards. So I have that engraving, I'm trying to level that up, and really I use mostly blues in terms of my skills. So if you look at my skill bar down the bottom here, so down the bottom left there, you'll see it's all blue except for the one orange. And the only reason I have that orange is it's an interrupt. So basically if someone's casting, I can cast this and it will interrupt them. The second shot is an interrupt. It kind of blasts them up into the sky. But the blue, all of those, I'm using those because those are normal skills. And the damage gets increased by 20% when you're in defensive stance for those. And you'll also get additional damage whenever you're hit in your defensive stance. In your defensive stance is this down the bottom, the Z key, the special ability. So the best way to use your Gunlancer is really use the Shout of Hatred. The shout's this is going to be your taunt. So you'll notice here it actually it'll kind of taunt, that lets out a fierce roar and taunts non-player foes for 5 seconds. So this is your taunt ability. I usually lead with a bash because what that's going to do is increase our attack power and lower the defense of the enemies that we're fighting. Then you blow a thunderbolt, and the thunderbolt's basically this giant ass AoE, which is super cool, hard hitting. And then you've got your leap attack where you jump on top of them, and that actually has an electric field ability, creates like an electrical AoE. And then you shield charge, and that's like a pushback, a knockback, and also utility because it'll let you move a lot faster too. And then shield bash is just kind of an extra. Nalazia's energy is a buff, a party buff, and that's important when you're doing raids later in game, like the dungeons, because what it's going to do is it's going to clear debuffs and also shield your party. And then, like I said, the last one's really just an interrupt. But yeah, you want to bust in, Shout of Hatred, and then press Z for defensive stance when you get in boss fights, or you get in a heavy, hard-hitting situation. And then you just do extra damage and have more shield when you're in defensive stance. You know, honestly, I stay this all the time. I play the blues all the time. The blue abilities aren't just for tanks. It's just you could still use those in the other build. So if you take a look at the other engraving and what it does. So the Low Knight, basically it increases your crit damage and your crit rate. But you can't use your battlefield shield. So it kind of like lets you do extra damage for the trade-off of that you're not really as good of a tank. And obviously you can see here shield meter consumption during defensive stance. Plus 100%. That means basically you get less shield. It's gonna run through it really fast. But you do a lot more crit damage and crit rate. you know. So it's kind of like a, it's a trade-off. Do you want more, you want to be more tanky, or you want to go in and guns a-blazing kind of deal? But it is a really fun class. I usually don't play tanks in games, but I've been having a lot of fun with it, and it actually does a lot of damage. The class has been just a lot of fun to play. The hardest thing for me to get used to, though, Sniff, is the melee, because usually I'm like a ranged DPS class, like a mage or a sorcerer. In this game, like really sorceress is the only like ranged magic caster.
Please head to the first one.
And I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as the idea of a Gunlancer. Hey man, thanks for following. It's a pleasure to have you, man. Yeah, keep us posted on how you make out with your Gunlancer. I'm kind of learning as I go, man. So we're gonna shout. We're gonna hit bash. That's gonna increase our damage and lower their defense. That was our AoE. And now we follow it up with our jumps. And I have an ability on my jumps where I can do a second jump, and then we can shield bash. Boom, 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 leading into the next group. That's a stun. That's my buff for less damage. Buffing our damage, AoE. And now it's just basically, once you run through that sequence, it's just hitting the keys again. Whenever those, whenever they come up off a cooldown, just hit them again. Man, that's Gunlancer, man. At least that's how I play Gunlancer.
Now, go to the second gate control.
But it's cool because I've seen a lot of other builds. A lot of builds online, like say the best Gunlancer builds are like using the fire bullets and the singers. But honestly, I love the AoE. I like these combos so far. I may try out the other one sometime, but I haven't really been liking this. I've really been digging this build. They call this a let me check. What do they call this build? There's really two builds people run with Gunlancer. And so one of them is the Solo Knight, or the Soul Knight, and then the other one is the Combat Readiness, which I think are those engraving names. Yeah, Combat Readiness and Low Knight or Soul Knight. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've definitely been loving it, man. Any specific questions? I've actually been seeing quite a few people playing them, which is cool. So I'm going to go into my shield mode because there's a lot of them here. Stun a couple, extra damage, AoE. Stun them again. The hardest part sometimes is gathering them up. So any of these moves with the 2 arrows above it, you'll notice some of these moves have the, like 2 arrow, like a greater than symbol. Those moves will actually move your character forward as you cast it, so it's kind of like you're getting a little bit of forward momentum from it. So that's kind of cool to make sure you kind of learn the different skills and the movements, so you can kind of group them. So I'm kiting right now. I'm gonna throw my shield, shout, extra damage, and now watch this. That was pretty clean. And that's really how it goes. Yeah, so the combat readiness, the reason it's gonna make you more tanky is because it's gonna increase your shield. So it gives you 50% at the final upgrade. You'll see there in level 3. It gives you additional damage with normal skills, plus 20% damage. And then it's also going to give you additional 50% shield when you're in defensive stance. And then you get a buff, so that when you are in defensive stance, which is basically when you're tanking, you get additional damage buffs for 10 seconds when you're hit, and it stacks up to 3 times. So you get normal skill damage all the time, plus 20%. Then you get a buff for damage when you're hit, and it stacks 3 times. So you got 6 times 3, so an 18% more damage. So you're doing 38% more damage with those blue skills and then you get 50% more shield. And that shield is this defensive stance shield, this the Z button on PC. And that basically gives you immunity to pushes, so like bosses can't knock you down. You're literally like, you're an indestructible tank, man. That's sick. It's a lot of fun. And then this bar here will grow as you get hit. So you can see there's shield meters recovered every time you attack or you hit a foe, and also when they hit you. And you regularly recover a small amount of shield when you're in defensive stance. So that's pretty cool. Defensive stance, that Z button is definitely the way to go. That's kind of your tank mode.
Successful.
But there's also a battlefield shield that you can use too. So what that does is that will move you away from where you're currently standing. You do some damage to the bad guys, not a whole lot. And you kind of launch them in the air. But then basically you gain a shield. And you grant push and pull immunity and stuff. But I like the defensive stance. That's my favorite. You can kind of turn it on and off as you want. Yeah, no man, no problem. You have to let me know how you like it. Come back in a couple days and let me know how you're making out. It's definitely been fun. The levels get interesting. You think you get burned out after a while because it's all the same. But every map, every new area is a really cool, different design. And the dungeons are definitely the best part. You'll dig it. Well, this guy's badass. He's got like a cool shield going around him. Alright, so I'm gonna shield up. Go through. Alright, so we're already through 2 bars. 2.5 bars. Our shield's down now, so now we need to watch for red. So our defensive shield is down, so I'm going to watch the ground for any red. And that's going to be, like right now he's attacking, he's doing damage, I'm going to heal. Moving out of that. Taunting, extra damage, jump, jump. And if you get knocked down, you hit spacebar enough time, you'll see my body glowed white. So if you hit spacebar when you get knocked back, your guy will jump right back up. It's really super cool. And so now my bar's halfway filled and I'm gonna hit my shield now. So now my shield's up. I'm doing extra damage. And we just, I mean, absolutely melted this guy. AoE. Look at that. Get wrecked, son!
Leaving only the strong.
It's a lot of fun.